Okay, Dreameroutthere back. I'm done with part 2 of my prologue. So the prologue is basically a 28-page comic book. If it were to get printed in whole, it'd be 28 pages of actual comic. So the first video I did on this comic was the first half of it because I literally couldn't make a JPEG, a comic strip long enough with every single page in it. So yes. Because I couldn't make it long enough, I split it into 2, and this is part 2. And like I said, I would have this done soon, so let's get into this. So as you can see, this is the cover just for the singular issue, so I used the same cover on part 1 and 2. But if I ever got this printed, you know, just the part 2 won't be there, it'll just say Prologue. This title page would be the title page from part 1 in a printed issue. This right here with the art from part 2 in it like this is only going to be for the online 2-part release of this. So yes, again, every single issue, every single comic gives you this, which is the map of this alternate universe where my story takes place. So part 2 picks up right after Felipe got kicked in the balls and he's falling down, and right as he's falling down, he is remembering some events that are inciting events that have led up to the current events that are happening. So in the second panel here, you have a moment he's remembering where Sarah was in a beautiful red dress and they were out on a date, and he was telling her that if she's not going to be entering the tournament, then he thinks he could actually have a chance of winning because he only gets flustered when he's out there fighting with her because, you know, he's in love with her. It's a whole thing. And she cracks a joke that, well, now that you're dating, you better not piss me off. Otherwise, if I enter, I'm going to enter to win. And he tells her that's not funny in the least bit. And she says, it's a little funny. So he's remembering this moment. Okay. Then a few months later, you've got this moment where Felipe and Sarah and Sybil and Courtney all went out to a hot spring out in the mountains while it was snowing. And they're going to form what they're referring to as a quartet, because there apparently is no real good name for a 4-person couple or a 4-person relationship that rolls off the tongue right. And everybody in this relationship here is basically not into commitment. It's going to be the thing that's with the generation that's going on here. You know, a lot of people, they're into open relationships and not committing and, you know, having that bit of life not bogged down for them. So they're starting this whole thing. So Felipe is here with Sybil while Sarah's back there making out with Courtney. And Sybil is the one talking about they need a good name for their little thing. And they're going to call it a quartet instead of a fourple or a quad or any number of other things. And then in this panel down here is when everything kind of went to shit. So in a nutshell, what happened here was they had a whole thing going on, and Sarah was comfortable with this. They're all in on it. They're all comfortable. They all know what's happening. However, Sarah was under the impression that any time that anything happened, they were going to be in on it together. They were going to talk about it. And she discovered that Courtney and Sybil, who are kind of like each other's shadow, they were already messing around with Felipe before Sarah was involved in any of this, and Sarah's still a virgin at this point. She also discovers that they were planning a thing for her birthday, which is coming up, because her birthday is December 31st. So when she caught them and things were going on, she basically just found out that her first attempt at an open relationship just went to shit because they were cheating behind her back and she couldn't actually trust the people who she tried to trust. So you got Felipe standing up and remembering basically how this got to this point. He looks up and he sees that he's now lower in the score, and from there the fighting continues. You've still got the holographic dragons moving in the background. The referee, his name's Darren. He's telling them that Felipe, I'm pretty sure he's down to 1 or 2 warnings, and Felipe's down to 1 warning, and Sarah, she's down to 2 warnings, because you get 3 warnings in this whole thing. So they're fighting, and Sarah's twin sister Alicia is getting into it, and she's screaming at Felipe, and her boyfriend's finding it kind of funny that she's actually, you know, cheering her sister on. They don't always get along very well, so it's a cute little thing. So Sarah goes down, and Felipe runs, and he tries to attack her again while she's down, because in part 1, he kicked her in the face while she was down. Instead of actually getting her this time, she kicks him in the stomach, and then she does a flip onto her hands and kicks him with her feet. And then Darren walks over and basically tells Felipe, okay, you're out of warnings now. Just, you need composure. You need to be calm. I get it. She's under your skin. He tries to talk him down, get him to just cool it. But she has kind of gotten under his skin, and now he's angry. He's still remembering yet more moments. A moment with him and Sarah doing who knows what. Then the moment where everything went to shit. And then he's remembering a moment where his sister tried to tell him some shit. And he, at the same time, he's listening to everything that the audience is yelling, because part of this tournament is ignoring the audience, because everything they're yelling is supposed to distract you. Because in reality, in a real world situation, if you're getting into a fight, the world is distracting. You need to learn to tune that out. So that's part of this tournament, is not listening to what everyone's yelling. But Felipe's not having that, and he's just at his last end, and he's literally, he's just mad, and he's snapping, and he screams, and he runs, and he tells everybody to shut the fuck up. And I've got this cool thing where the dragon's kind of running with him as he runs over, and he grabs 2 staffs. And one of the girls in the audience, she's just like, Felipe, what are you doing? And Darren tries to run over, and Felipe cracks him in the head with the staff. And at this point, it's not a tournament anymore. Felipe's lost it. But here's the thing, is that in this tournament, Felipe's not the first person who's ever lost his shit. So this is actually anticipated that something like this could happen. So this isn't as bad as it looks, but it's pretty bad. And he walks over here. Okay, right here in this panel, I had a hard time with this shot. Just drawing it, getting the perspective right, trying to show him walking over and then throwing her the thing and making it all look fluid. I did my best. Then they fight with staffs here. And Sarah asks, have you lost your fucking mind? And, okay, right here. So, I don't know how well you can see my artwork, the way this is drawn, but I have drawn her holding these staffs in a way where her hands are open, but she's balancing the staff in her hand. And if you can see, from this panel here to this panel here, she used her staff to push his staff down, and then she swooped him. Swooping is where you take your staff and you run it along the other person's staff and you hit their hand with it. My dad is a stick fighter. He fights in an Indian fighting technique known as Lati. In Lati, that's one of the things you do. You hit a stick and you run your stick down the stick and you hit the opponent's hands, you make them drop their weapon. That is something that anytime you see somebody fighting with a spear or a staff or something, they always get it wrong in TV. Like, the most recent example I can think of is The Mandalorian, which, I mean, far be it from me to say anything about The Mandalorian. That show is amazing. But where Ahsoka had to fight Jet Li's goddaughter, and she was using a Beskar steel staff, and Ahsoka had lightsabers. All Ahsoka had to do was hit the staff and run her sabers down and chop the woman's fingers off because of the way she was holding it. And that's something they do all the time when you see staffs. Their fingers are always in the way, and it's a perfect target, and all anyone has to do is just smash their fucking hand with the staff. And they never do, because it's all choreographed. So, I tried to draw this correct, where Sarah's keeping her hands open and she's holding this thing so he can't swoop her. And him, impulsively, he's holding a closed fist. And you see she does swoop him. And then she hits him in the cheek. And, this isn't all perfect. This isn't all the way. I mean, again, like part 1, I tried to show this fight as well as I could. But I know a thing or two about stick fighting just from my dad. And also watching a whole bunch of shit and doing research online. So I tried with this one. And they keep fighting here. And you can see again, Felipe's got his hands open so she can't swoop him. He's got his fingers out of the way. And I tried to make this feel very fast-paced. She went for his head. They hit several times. She went past him. She's blocking. And she hits him right square beneath the sternum, in the shoulder, in the knee. And then she swoops the thing around her several times and spins the thing around her body. Now, I watched several videos of Chloe Bruce doing this. And no matter how many times I watched her do it, she just moves too fast and it's too hard to accurately draw. And I wasn't sure how to do it. And, I'm sure some comic master could do it, but I couldn't. So I tried to draw her twirling this staff around herself as well as I could. In the end, artwork is never finished. It's only abandoned kind of stuff. But did as good as I could. And she basically tells him back off, that she's better with a bow. And this is final warning. And he screams at her that if she were better, then she would have already won. And he comes running at her, and that's right when the other referees all show up. And they basically tell him to stop and to drop their weapons. And they scream to drop their weapons. They say this isn't a tournament anymore. And Sarah, she's listening. She hears them, and she drops her weapon. But Felipe, he's seeing red, and he's in the zone. He didn't hear a thing they're saying. And he connects, and he hits her arm. He's going to fracture her arm. And he just barely misses cracking her head open, but he does take her headgear off of her head. And he comes out of it right as she's going down, and she hits the mat. And she's down for the count. And then twin sister Elise, she screams from the back, and she tells Felipe that he basically just fucked up. And then you see them slamming Felipe down and coming and running to check on Sarah. And then smash cut to Austin, where it's 6 in the morning versus almost 1 in the afternoon in Paris. At 6 in the morning, they're watching a live stream of the fight, and the stream gets ended right there with Sarah down. And the next thing coming up is City of Lights Budokai live reactions on YouTube. And what this shows you is that my other characters who live in Austin aren't in Paris yet. Megan Westbrook from right to left, Megan Westbrook, Ben Johnson, Sierra Jordan, and Jasper Morgan. They were all watching the fight. They saw it live, and they know what happened. They know who Sarah is. And so when Megan gets to Paris and she meets Sarah, she's going to be aware of the events of the story. And what this is also showing you is how my little holophones work, which I've done some artwork of a broken down view of the insides of the holophone and the way it works. So soon I'm going to be releasing that artwork of the holophone and all the parts and pieces in it and how it works. I've actually designed a phone that goes into this, but this is a holographic projection basically. They're watching on a phone. And that's where the story ends. And it's going to pick up next time with Megan and her boyfriend, which at the end of this, I'm going to show a quick preview of that. Yeah. But for now, this is what I got. This is what I'm showing you. Hope you like it. I've worked very hard to get to this point, to get this story done. If you want to check it out, both parts are up on DeviantArt at Dreameroutthere.com. You go to Dreameroutthere.com and it'll take you straight to my DeviantArt page. And that's pretty much all I have to say about this. But yeah, I'm really proud. The prologue's out. I'm working on chapter 1 right now. I'm steaming ahead. I've set up a Patreon. I'm going to be posting stuff up there soon. And I hope there's at least someone out there that enjoys my story, because I'm trying here. I really am. And for me, it's just fun to get it out of my head, to draw my story, to depict it, and to make it. And, I'm doing it, so that's half the fun. And that's what it's all about, is to actually do it. So here you have the rules of the tournament, which I won't get too far into. You can pause it and read them if you want. They're pretty self-explanatory. That's another thing about this tournament, is that it's purpose designed to have as few rules as possible, so sometimes it can get out of control and get kind of wild. And these cover very broadly everything about this tournament. And then here you got the about page that introduces who everybody is in this story, who matters, and who I will be expanding upon as I start making and releasing new chapters. And then as a slight bonus, here is where I am on chapter 1. So this opens up in Austin, which is basically the next day after the tournament. And we've got Megan here, and her boyfriend have just said goodbye to each other. And he's moving into a brand new condo that he's just bought. He's getting ready to go to school and become an engineer. That's his whole thing. And he and Megan, they also are some of those young people that don't want to commit to each other, but they're kind of committed, but kind of not committed. So, it's a thing. He's not really thinking about whether or not they are a thing. In his mind, they are a thing. In her mind, they're a thing, but they're not really a thing. It's a thing. And it basically starts with them both getting dressed. And they're having a conversation about him wanting her to stay the night. And she's telling him, no, I've got to go to the airport at 7 in the morning. And I've got to meet my friend McKenna. And there's a bunch of stuff I have to do. And I can't stay. And he's like, well, have McKenna come over here. And we can all hang out together. And she makes a joke about, oh, I'm sure you'd like that. And they quip back and forth a little. And he's like, I could take you home at 3 a.m. You'd still have time to make the airport. She's like, no, I wouldn't get, get even less sleep than I'm already not going to get. He tells her sleep's for pussies. She's like, yeah, well, I'm going to be a pussy because I'd rather sleep. And she says some last words to him. Some stuff I won't really put in here. You'll get to read it one day. But they say their goodbyes, and she gets up and she checks her holophone. Again, I'm going to release some artwork of how these holophones work. But he says goodbye to her. And she has a funny response to what he says to her, shuts the door, and then he's alone and by himself in his room. And the last thing is a little coming from the ceiling because he's got holograms on the ceilings, and there are also holograms on the windows behind him. So there are holographic image curtains on these rooms. You can't really see into them. That's why the city kind of looks the way it does. It's all hologrammed out. And yeah, it's a thing. And this is the beginning of this, and basically she is getting ready to go to Paris for one of the biggest New Year's parties of the year. There's always a huge party at this giant rave tower in Paris, and that's where she's going this year, and her mom's taking her, and yeah, that is where this is all beginning, and it's all headed somewhere, and this is where I am. So if you made it this far into the video, thanks for watching, thanks for listening to me ramble, thanks for showing any interest at all in my story, and I hope everyone is well, and I wish nothing but the best. Have a good one.